So we have a few more folks that are joining in. Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining for our monthly APAC office hours. I just have a couple of updates and reminders from my end before we'll dive into any questions that you have. Do you want to remind everyone, if you are joining us for the first time, we have a weekly Semantic Kernel office hours for US and EMEA from 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific time weekly. And then we have this monthly instance for APAC. For Pacific time, it's from 4 to 5 p.m. I know for folks in APAC, it's morning. So thank you for starting your morning with us. If you have any questions outside of these office hours, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're very, very active in the Semantic Kernel community in our GitHub discussions. And so we go through on a daily basis to triage and then can create issues and go from there as well. So just a couple of mechanisms to engage with us on. I'm going to put links in chat. The first link is to our most recent releases. And we've had a couple of releases since we have met. Our most recent one is our Python 1.20.0. And it has a number of new features from a DeepSeek service in samples that Tao's worked on, prompt template config and kernel arg support for agents that Evan has worked on. And so there are some examples there. And then there's also a new feature with chat history reducer that Evan's worked on, where there are some examples using that reducer, using chat completion with that as well, and being able to include function call content and result content as well. And then on the .NET side, we have a number of releases since we last met, but the version here 1.36.1 is really a couple of just bug fixes and minor changes. No huge feature changes on this version, but I would go back and look if you haven't. This is really just around being able to add in audio content capabilities for Gemini, some doc improvement for the agent folder, and some other cleanup as well. We have a number of blogs that we've shared out. If you haven't had a chance to look, we do have our semantic kernel roadmap that I'll dive into. But we actually have Danny on the call. And so we did have a great customer case study as a result of our APAC office hours from Prezi and all the great work that they've done. So if you haven't had a chance to look at this, please do. It's the third link in the chat that I shared. And so there's a great demo that Danny and the Prezi team have of how they're working with Blue Bungalow, being able to integrate into their product and be able to have search functionality by design, by different type of kind of clothing materials, by different articles, and then filter by size. And so it's a really great demo. There's a screen grab. I have the YouTube video. If we have time at the end, I can play that out. And then just the other thing from roadmap, we're really highlighting a couple of key areas. There's a number of areas for vector store and others that we're focused on, but really our big North Star right now is getting agents to GA. And the agents framework is right now in preview, so the APIs are now locked. There'll be no changes there, but we are looking to go through for GA and have some integration within AutoGen. I know a lot of folks have been asking about this in the past as well. So this is a great blog to read out on. And then I think just the couple final things before we turn over to your questions and just hearing from you is, in addition to our roadmap, we have our buckets by backlog. And so if you're wanting to go even deeper and really see where is the team working, if there's a specific feature ask that you have, this is a great way to be able to filter by our work as well and be able to understand that in detail. With that, for our documentation, a big one that we're going through and updating, we'll still have some additional updates that are coming as process framework. So there's a number of how-to guides as well for folks to be able to go through. But with that, I would love to turn it over to folks who have joined in. If you have questions or just discussion topics, we'd love to hear from you.
I can start if that's fine.
Perfect.
I think is one of the topics that you just touched on the last release, and it has to do with the parallel work between Semantic Kernel and AutoGen. And I'll give you the reason why I'm reaching to this topic and why I came to the call or why I'm interested on it has to do with the view of in the same article we see Semantic Kernel is focused on production, right? Is focused on a prod ready environment. and we see AutoGen as a multi-agent, let's say, experimentation initiative. We are trying to work with a multi-agent framework, and we're in the place where we know that if we cannot do it in AutoGen, we won't be able to do it in semantic kernel, right? We see that analogy, but we don't know how easy will be the migration of the agents from AutoGen, the orchestration in AutoGen coming into semantic kernel. I know that there's some roadmap on migrating agents, AutoGen agents into semantic kernel, but I'm really curious about the orchestration. That's something that is driving me. I don't want to use crazy, but it's something that I'm really curious about. What's the
Yeah,
plan
yeah,
there?
great question. We're actually in the process of the AutoGen and Semantic Kernel team of releasing out our more detailed blog that actually shows the in-depth code samples, gets to the orchestration of that. But really the intent when we say have AutoGen multi-agent within Semantic Kernel is the experience that you get from not only multi-agents, but from orchestrator you'd be able to have in production for Semantic Kernel, but still be able to, test, go through any research pieces that you're wanting to do with the latest and greatest from AutoGen. But that is something on our backlog of items. I'm gonna grab the GitHub item that we have for it as well, because there's a number from both the semantic kernel and AutoGen side that I can share out that kind of details in depth the work that we're doing.
Is that a discussion or is it like a story that you're working on?
It's a PR.
Okay, beautiful. I'll have a look into that. That would be great.
And you were looking more from AutoGen being hosted in semantic kernel versus the other way around, correct?
Yeah. So I'll try to give you a little bit more of context. Uh, we're working with a customer, right? And the customer obviously, hey, I want multi-agents. We need multi-agents, right? So we are helping, and we're in the place where we say, okay, which orchestration or what are your requirements? One of the requirements that they mentioned is we want to run parallel jobs. We want to run queries to parallel agents, let's say. When we start saying this, we know in AutoGen is doable, but in semantic kernel, I see only two orchestrations. And you can do it as I didn't see how we can do the same that is being possible in AutoGen with semantic kernel on the parallel scenario, right? So when I'm saying this, I'm with the customer and I'm saying, okay, that's your requirement. We know that there's a roadmap to migrate these orchestrators or this orchestration from AutoGen into semantic kernel. So let's do it right now with AutoGen, thinking eventually we'll migrate to semantic kernel because that's what we see as that's a production ready framework. So that's why I'm saying, hey, we're building here, but we should be targeting the one on the left, right? So I hope that gives you a little bit more of context on where I'm coming from.
Yeah, perfect. I've shared both from our integration for both of these and all kind of our detailed PRs that came out of some of our work. There's still additional work that's being done as well. But yeah, this is kind of a good in-depth look at each of the PRs and items that are coming.
Oh, this one looks really cool. Dapper Orleans runtime. Okay, now I have homework. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. If you have further questions, feel free to, reach out IM and we can discuss further. But there is an additional blog post and more detail that is coming as well that will be released out from both teams in the short-term future as well. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, thanks for the question. Other questions folks may have.
I have other questions, but I feel I'm to be clear, I'm working with Juan as well. So our questions are very focused and probably might be a bit of a monopolizing on your time. So I'm reluctant to to
No,
use up
go
too much
for
of
it.
it.
Go for it. It's a small audience today, so if you have any questions, feel free. I know from the Semantic Kernel team, a couple folks had conflicts, so if I can't answer, I can direct you in the right individual as well for a thread
Okay,
if
cool.
needed. But yeah, I'd love to hear more.
Yeah, just to extend a little on what Juan was saying, when looking at AutoGen, the pub sub mechanism that it's using is quite nice and very simple and seemingly lightweight. And the higher level agent APIs also provide a nice quick way of doing lots of things. And the distributed runtime and single threaded runtime that seems to support that, particularly distributed, because we'll eventually be going there. I'm not clear how that sort of will translate into semantic kernel. I know that they're looking at Dapper and things like that, but that seems, I don't know, it seems similar but different to the likes of the pub sub mechanism in AutoGen. So because that's what we'll be utilizing, I'm just curious how
Yeah,
the,
there it
the
definitely
transition
be
path.
there'll be some shared runtime. So there is one of the work items. Actually the very last one I just shared in the thread actually shows the implementation of semantic kernel autogen and a shared runtime between. And so really being able to come together, like you're saying, be able to have that experience that you get in autogen, but to also have that within semantic kernel. So there is the PR I've linked if you want to go in further detail, but it will definitely be coming in more detail in our blog that we're sharing out. So hopefully that helps answer kind of where run times are looking to go.
Yeah, beautiful. I'll have a look through the PR. Thank you.
Perfect. Other questions that folks may have? Or also just discussion of, hey, I'm working on X, if you're comfortable sharing out. This is recorded and posted out on YouTube, but if you're, comfortable sharing out any of your work that you're doing, other items, would love to hear more of how you're thinking about approaching semantic kernel.
I have one that is interesting. It's something I'm working on. I'm trying to build a plugin that is going to be doing something like web search. Correct. So when I go inside I'm working on Python first. That's a plug.
Okay.
So when I'm working on Python, I can build a plugin and create different tools inside, functions inside, right? I see you have internally, you have something that is Bing search, like dot Bing search. There's another
Yep.
one that is dot Bing, and it's a little bit confusing. I don't know if they're doing similar and one is better than the other one, but I saw a Bing search and a Bing. And my thinking is that this plugin will be able to connect a function that is doing that Bing search, a function that eventually is going to be one of the core plugins that is do an HTTP request.
Mm-hmm.
I'll put the links of
If
the
you
items
could,
that
yeah,
I'm
that'd be great.
mentioning, and then add a step that is okay. Now that you have the answer from Bing, now you have the content of those URLs. Create an answer to the client, right? To give to the agent.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's the approach. I don't know if my thinking is correct. The goal is just to do a web search plugin that I can add into an agent that will say, okay, let's say, please ground your response on using Bing search, right? And my idea is, okay, the plugin will do these steps as functions, but I don't know if is the correct logic, or if I should say this to the agent, or like put it in its instructions, or I'm a little bit confused on that one. And
Yeah,
I'll put
great
the links here.
question. I think there's, multiple approaches you could take. It sounds like you almost have multiple steps that you're wanting the agent to go through. And so I think another really good framework to look at is actually the one I mentioned for process framework and some of our documentation, where you can have multiple steps where an agent is doing a step, going through, returning that. You can have human in the loop to be able to validate before proceeding and some different samples. But I think what you're mentioning really would be good to look at process framework and see if that can help you out within, Bing and the functions that you were finding within plugins. I think those are great avenues to also go through. But I would take a look of what you're describing at something like process framework if it is something that would be repeatable that you would need to have on an ongoing basis and not a one-off.
And would you see that process framework? So would it be like something that I tell the agent? I'm trying to see the agent not giving it not telling him what to do specifically, right? He's autonomous, and I would like him to ground the answer with some search. right? Whatever you go, whatever tools you have or plugins you have, you get an answer, but please ground it with scenarios from being searched. Would I see it as a separate process framework, or is it, or the process framework will come as a plugin to my agent?
I would see the process framework more as overarching because you would explain then the step after with Azure or being able to connect. And so I see all those different pieces as being a process within process framework that you could go through and implement and have it be autonomous. But I would see that being a bit separate there is something that you could definitely look at. But happy to, discuss, even if it's outside of this office hours, feel free to ping me and we can chat further as you're going through and exploring different approaches and playing with some of the different plugins that are out there as well.
Awesome. That sounds great. I will put the links of the tools that I'm planning to use. I don't know if that help, but I will put them
Yeah, it'd be
in
great.
the chat.
That'd be great. And then another thing I don't think I mentioned, but I linked to, there are our office hours recordings that we post out for this monthly session and for weekly. So there's a lot of really good discussion and goodness from our weekly one. Davis, there was a number of semantic workbench and semantic memory kind of questions that came up today. But just seeing from Danny, Davis, anything from your end that you guys want to discuss or dive into, as we have a smaller crowd, would love to hear from you.
Yeah, actually, I have questions more like just seeking opinions. Um, we are looking into ways for users for our clients to um, have a bit of control over the prompts, and we are thinking what's the best way to open up the prompts for clients to use. Because prompts you have like we're using prompt templates, so it has a lot of variables, it has a lot of different parts, examples, and things like that. And we are just internally debating whether this is a good idea. First of all, open up the prompts for clients to change, and also whether like the clients they are actually familiar with the concept of prompting and be able to meaningfully actually give a good prompt. So I just wondering, like, have you come across any scenarios where an application opens up a prompt for people to change? And like, do you have any views on that?
Yeah, really good question. I'll look through. There was a recent customer case study that had this. I think the biggest thing that comes to my mind when you say open up prompts is just making sure that you're thinking about security and potential prompt injection attacks. And
Yeah,
so I would
that
just kind
as
of make
well,
sure
actually.
that
Yes.
that's, I think, one of the biggest
Yeah.
vulnerabilities that I would highlight of being able to understand what would the user be providing that couldn't be provided another way with just the potential for that. I think that's a big one that I would think of, but I think it makes sense, if you're wanting to give the users more ability to go through with prompts. But let me see if I can also, when we're in this call or after, I can also email you the case study where there was some changes to prompt. But yeah, I think the biggest thing that I think about when you're starting to think about prompts is security and how to make sure that it's not opened up too much where you're having that attack surface that an individual can come and maliciously use that prompting to influence.
Yeah, it's mainly for like um admins to change. Like it's not really for everyone to change.
Okay.
So you need
Okay.
to have, but it's like security is definitely one thing. And also like whether, yeah, like we're just interested to hear some views on it and see whether this is actually a common practice or not.
Yeah, let me start an email and share some of the kind of case studies we have and be able to go from there of what we've seen. Because, like you're saying, if it's just admins, makes sense. They're going to need to be adding in pieces, but how to kind of walk that balance between giving access and security. So I can definitely take a note and follow up with you.
Yep. Great. Thank you.
Perfect. Well, I'll stay on if there are any other questions, but as we do have a smaller audience today, we can also look to end early if there aren't other questions. But just know that we are always here if you need any support from GitHub discussions. Feel free to reach out, and we can always dive into things you have even outside the monthly office hours. But yeah, I'll stay on for a minute or two more if there are any other questions folks have.